Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. The hum of the Triton's spear was a lullaby, a constant, low thrum that vibrated through the deck plates and seeped into my bones. For 3 weeks it had been the only sound that truly mattered, a testament to the colossal engineering, keeping 28 souls from being instantly crushed into paste by the oceanic abyss. I was LT. Commander David Riley, and my world was a console of green-on-black readouts, sonar pings, and the occasional crackle of static. My realm was sound, and in the deep sound was life, or sometimes, the first whisper of oblivion. We were deeper than any manned vessel had ever intentionally gone, tracing the knife edge of the Marianas Trench's uncharted southern rim. Our mission, geological mapping, hydrothermal vent exploration, and the ever-present, unspoken hope of discovering something new. We had found new things, certainly. Bioluminescent fauna like living jewels, volcanic spires spewing superheated water, and abyssal plains stretching into infinity, but nothing like this. It started subtly, as these things always do. A flicker on my active sonar, so faint I almost dismissed it as noise, interference from a distant thermal plume. I double-checked the filters, ran diagnostics, everything clean. "Anything, Riley?" Commander Sharma's voice, calm and authoritative, cut through the quiet of the bridge. She stood behind me, hands clasped behind her back, her gaze fixed on the main display, which mirrored my primary sonar. "Just a blip, ma'am," I replied, tapping a few keys. Faint, could be anything, large geological feature, maybe a particularly dense cluster of xenophophores. Sharma hummed a thoughtful sound. "Run a passive sweep in that vector. See if it has a thermal signature." I nodded, switching modes. Passive sonar was our ears, listening to the deep rather than shouting into it. It was slow, agonizing work, sifting through the ocean's myriad noises, distant whale song, the grinding of tectonic plates, the incessant rain of marine snow. For hours, nothing, then a new whisper, almost imperceptible. "Ma'am, I'm getting something," I said, my voice lower, now tighter. "A pressure wave, irregular, deep below us, moving fast. Define fast, Riley. Mach 3, ma'am, possibly more. And it's accelerating." A silence descended on the bridge, heavier than the water outside. Mach 3 was impossible for any known subaquatic life. Even the most advanced torpedoes struggled with Mach 1. This was like hearing a jet engine in the deep ocean. "No thermal signature?" Sharma asked, her brow furrowed. "Negative, just a pressure displacement, a massive one. It's too deep for light, too deep for any conventional propulsion to generate that kind of speed without an accompanying thermal plume. Can you get a size estimate?" I tried, fiddling with the parameters, but the signal was too diffuse, too transient. "It's huge, ma'am. Whatever it is, it's not a whale. It's not even a super whale. It's echo signature. It's like a mountain moving." Over the next 2 days, the mountain became a ghost. It would appear, streak across our passive sonar in an impossible burst of speed, then vanish, only to reappear hundreds of miles away. It never showed on active sonar for long, as if it sensed our probes and recoiled. The crew grew restless. The anomaly was discussed in hushed tones over synthetic nutrient paste in the mess hall. Theories ranged from a new species of hyperdeep gigantism to an alien craft. Commander Sharma maintained a calm facade, but I saw the lines of fatigue deepen around her eyes. She ordered us to maintain our mission parameters, but there was an underlying tension, a sense of being watched. Then, things escalated. It wasn't just the phantom on sonar anymore, it was the sounds. I started hearing them first, in the dead of my watch, not through the sonar, not through the hydrophones, but directly through the hull itself. A low, resonant hum, a vibration that seemed to bypass the metal and resonate directly in my bones. It felt like standing inside a giant bell that had been struck from without. "Anyone else feel that?" I asked, looking at Ensign Davies, my relief. He shook his head, looking up from his coffee. "Feel what, sir?" I frowned. Was it just me? Sleep deprivation was a known enemy on deep-sea missions, blurring the lines between reality and delusion. I dismissed it, attributing it to fatigue, but the hum returned, and it grew louder. Soon, other crew members started reporting it. Chief Engineer O'Connell, a man whose sanity was rooted firmly in the tangible world of pipes and pumps, looked pale one morning. "My God, Riley, did you hear that last night? Like a goddamn tuning fork in the engine room," gave me the shivers. Dr. Chen, our medical officer, began prescribing mild sedatives for sleep. "Stress and isolation, David," she'd said, touching my arm gently. "It amplifies everything, makes the hull creaks sound like monsters." But the hull creaks were becoming monsters. The Triton's spear was designed to withstand unprecedented pressure, but the sounds it made now were beyond mere structural groans. They were guttural, rhythmic, almost deliberate, like something outside was testing us. Pushing on the metal, listening for our response. Then came the power fluctuations, not a critical failure, but a series of unsettling brownouts. Lights on the bridge would dim, flicker, then surge back to full intensity. Screens would momentarily black out, then refresh. The environmental controls would stutter, sending a momentary chill through the cramped compartments before correcting themselves. O'Connell swore every time it happened, tearing his hair out in the engine room. "It's not electrical, Riley," he'd bellowed over the comms during one particularly violent flicker that plunged the bridge into emergency red light for a full 30 seconds. "All power conduits are green. It's like something's sucking the energy out of the grid, then letting it go." Commander Sharma ordered an immediate ascent to shallower waters, breaking our mission parameters. The decision was met with a mix of relief and fear. Relief that we might escape whatever was down here, fear that we might be running directly into its path. As we began our slow ascent, the phenomenon intensified. The hum became a drone, vibrating the entire submarine. Loose objects rattled on shelves. The internal temperature dropped several degrees, a damp, bone-chilling cold permeating the recycled air. The air itself began to smell metallic, like ozone after a lightning strike, mingled with something else, something ancient and stagnant, like stagnant silt disturbed after eons. My sonar was a nightmare. The unknown entity, no longer a phantom, was now a constant, gargantuan presence. It didn't appear on active sonar anymore. It was too close for the pings to fully resolve. Instead, the passive array showed an enormous, diffuse echo surrounding us, pulsating rhythmically like a gigantic, unseen heart. It wasn't moving, we were, and it was letting us. "Helm full ahead," Sharma commanded, her voice strained. "Bring us up as fast as this boat can handle. Commander, the hull integrity alarm is showing stress fractures in Section 3. O'Connell's voice crackled, laced with panic. "The pressure outside is intense, and whatever this thing is, it's distorting the water pressure. We're tearing ourselves apart." A violent shudder rocked the Triton's spear. Lights went out entirely on my console. I slammed my fist on the panel, trying to bring them back. Panic, a cold, insidious dread began to take root. "Sonar report," Sharma snapped, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating her grim face. It's right here, ma'am," I stammered, my voice trembling. "All around us, it's like we're inside it." Another shudder. This time, a high-pitched shriek ripped through the metal hull, an unearthly sound that wasn't structural but felt like a living thing screaming. The sound made every tooth in my mouth ache. Then the whispers began. Not actual words, not in any language I knew. They were more like suggestions, auditory hallucinations born from the drone and the cold and the fear. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a multitude of voices murmuring just at the edge of comprehension. They seeped into my thoughts, planting seeds of doubt and despair. Lost, alone, hungry, I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands against my ears, but the whispers were inside my head. I opened my eyes to see Ensign Davies, normally stoic, clutching his head, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Riley Davies," Sharma's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus, we need to break contact." "I can't, Commander," Davies whimpered, tears streaming down his face. "It's talking to me. It's telling me things." "What is it telling you?" I asked, forcing the words out past the lump in my throat. He looked at me, his eyes glassy. It says we don't belong here. It says it's been waiting." That night was a descent into true madness. The Triton's spear was a tomb, rattling and groaning under an unseen, unspeakable presence. The whispers grew louder, more coherent. They preyed on our fears, our guilt, our deepest regrets. I heard my mother's voice, long dead, chiding me for a forgotten childhood transgression. I heard my ex-wife's bitter words, echoing the failure of our marriage. Every crewman seemed to be battling their own internal demons, brought to life by the suffocating entity outside. Dr. Chen was overwhelmed. Men openly wept, some cowered in their bunks, others lashed out in violence, punching walls, screaming at unseen tormentors. A few became eerily quiet, their eyes empty, their faces slack. I saw one man, Petty Officer Jenkins, staring at a bulkhead, whispering secrets to it as if it were a confessional. When I approached him, he merely smiled, a slow, vacant smile, and said, "It wants us to open the door, Riley. It's lonely." The idea of opening the pressure door, even for a second, was suicidal. The ocean outside would flood us, crush us instantly, yet the thought resonated with a terrifying logic. The pressure, the cold, the whispers, it was all a form of torture, a slow, deliberate violation of our minds. Perhaps death was a release. Commander Sharma was a bulwark, her will a steel anchor against the encroaching chaos. She had ordered a full lockdown, confining all non-essential crew to their quarters. She, O'Connell, and I were all that remained on the bridge, along with two other officers, Lt. Miller and Ensign Davies, who was now catatonic. "O'Connell, what's the status of the emergency ascent thrusters?" Sharma demanded, her voice hoarse but still sharp. "Thrusters are offline, Commander. Whatever this thing is, it's not just playing with power, it's changing the very properties of the water around us. It's like trying to push through solid rock, and the hull is groaning like a dying whale." We're losing integrity fast, a sudden, jarring lurch. We weren't just being nudged, we were being moved. The Triton's spear was being dragged sideways deeper. We're descending, Miller shouted, staring at the depth gauge with horror. Faster than free fall, brace for impact, Sharma yelled, slamming her hand on the general alarm. The klaxon shrieked, a counterpoint to the growing howl from the hull. I gripped my console, my knuckles white. The whispers were a roaring torrent in my mind now, indistinguishable from my own thoughts. They were no longer distinct voices. They were one collective consciousness, ancient and vast, flowing into me. Join US, belong. Drown in US, then a new visual. It appeared on the main viewport, which was supposed to be black, reflecting the eternal night of the deep. But now there was light, a soft, undulating bioluminescence emanating from just outside the reinforced glass. It was not the cold, electric blue of most deep-sea creatures. This was a rich, deep violet, shifting to an unsettling magenta, pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. It illuminated a surface. It wasn't rock, it wasn't fluid. It was flesh or something like it, smooth, impossibly vast, stretching beyond the limits of the viewport. It was like looking out at the skin of a planet. It had no discernible features, no eyes, no mouth, no scales. Just an endless, living expanse of violet magenta light pressing against our hull. My God, Miller whispered, utterly broken. Sharma stared, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. O'Connell staggered back, knocking over a chair, then began to retch uncontrollably. The light pulsed, faster now, a hypnotic beat. The hull groaned again, a deeper, more resonant sound, like the last sigh of a leviathan. And then, from the surface of that impossibly vast, luminous skin, something began to appear. Not a protrusion, not a limb, it was more like a pattern. Intricate, geometric forms began to etch themselves onto the violet surface, glowing brighter as they emerged. They were like sacred geometry, alien mandalas forming and reforming, utterly mesmerizing and utterly terrifying. They pulsed with an internal light, casting strange, dancing shadows on the inside of the sub. And with their appearance, the whispers became deafening. They were not just thoughts now, they were sounds, physical vibrations shaking my very teeth, rattling my bones. They were no longer suggestions, they were commands. Open the hatch, let USI in, become. I tore my gaze from the viewport, shaking my head violently. This was it, this was the end. The psychological torture had given way to an undeniable, overwhelming supernatural presence. Suddenly a metallic shriek, not from the hull this time, but from the main aft pressure hatch, the emergency exit leading to the mini-sub bay. Sparks flew as the seals groaned, straining against an immense, unseen force. It's trying to get in, O'Connell screamed, pointing a trembling finger. It's trying to pry the hatch. Sharma spun around, drawing her service pistol. Everyone, secure the hatches. O'Connell, full ballast jettison. Anything to get us up. Too late, Commander, O'Connell cried, his eyes wide with despair. It's too strong, the pressure, it's already distorting the metal. The hatch buckled inward, a sickening pop echoing through the sub. Water began to spray through a hairline crack, instantly vaporizing into steam from the temperature differential, filling the air with a choking, metallic mist. Through the mist, through the groaning metal and the screaming alarms, I saw it. The violet light pulsed faster, and one of the geometric patterns on the outer skin seemed to shift, to flow. It wasn't opening a door, it was becoming one. The patterns resolved into something resembling an impossibly intricate keyhole, and then a liquid darkness began to seep through the crack in the hatch. It wasn't water, it was a dense, viscous fluid, blacker than the abyss outside, yet somehow absorbing all light. It writhed, snaking its way into the sub, tasting the air. As it touched the deck plates, the metal sizzled and a faint, sweet smell, like ozone mixed with decaying flowers, filled the bridge. Miller fired his pistol. The rounds hit the inky fluid, but had no effect. The fluid rippled, absorbed the impact, and continued its relentless flow. It began to coalesce, to form shapes, tentacles, but not organic. They were too smooth, too perfectly formed, twisting and turning with a terrifying grace. They stretched, extending towards us. The whispers became a single, coherent voice in my head, a voice that was both mine and alien, a billion thoughts fused into one. You are the door. You are the key. One of the black tendrils reached Ensign Davies, who was still slumped against his console. It touched his forehead. His body arched, stiffening, and a silent scream distorted his features. Then his eyes, previously unfocused, snapped wide open, glowing with the same internal violet light I had seen on the outside. A low gurgle escaped his lips and his body slumped, lifeless, but he wasn't dead. He was empty, a husk. The tendril retracted, then moved towards LT. Miller fired again, emptying his clip, but it was futile. The tendril struck him, and he too stiffened, his eyes flaring with the terrible violet light before his body dropped. Commander Sharma was next. She stood her ground, pistol aimed, her face a mixture of defiance and ultimate terror. Get away from us, you bastard, she yelled, her voice breaking. The tendril advanced, swift and silent. It touched her hand holding the pistol. Her fingers twitched, then went slack. The gun clattered to the floor. The tendril moved up her arm, across her chest, and then to her face. Her eyes, those strong, resolute eyes, opened wide, and the violet light bloomed within them. She looked at me, an expression of profound, soul-crushing despair on her face, before her body joined the others, a lifeless puppet. I was the last one standing. O'Connell had collapsed into a fetal position, sobbing, incoherent. The tendrils ignored him, flowing towards me with an unnerving purpose. I stumbled back, tripping over a discarded headset, falling to the deck. The whispers were a cacophony, 1,000 voices merging into one dominant, ancient will that thrummed through my very being. You will join us, you will become. You will see. I scrambled backwards, my hands scraping against the metal, my breath ragged in my throat. My eyes were fixated on the tendril, black as a void, its tip seeming to shimmer with latent energy. It approached, slow, inexorable. I could feel its cold, alien presence already, seeping into my mind, probing my memories, my fears, my very essence. My hand brushed against something cold and hard, my emergency survival knife tucked into a sheath on my belt. I snatched it, my trembling fingers barely able to grip the hilt. It was a futile gesture, I knew, but it was all I had left. The tendril paused just inches from my face. Its tip seemed to expand, becoming a swirling vortex of blackness, drawing in the dim red emergency light. I could feel something pulling at my mind, a mental suction attempting to draw out my consciousness, to empty me as it had emptied the others. I screamed, a guttural, animalistic cry born of pure terror and desperation. With the last vestige of my will, I plunged the knife into the tendril. It was like plunging it into thick, gelatinous oil. There was no resistance, no pain, no blood, but the entity recoiled. A shriek, not from the sub, but from within my head, a billion-voiced agony that ripped through my thoughts. The violet light outside the viewport pulsed erratically, furiously. The tendril thrashed, momentarily losing its form, then reasserted itself. But it had hesitated. It was enough. It was a moment of clarity in the overwhelming terror. It wasn't just physical. It was vulnerable to something else. It was connected to us, to our minds, our emotions. I looked at the bodies of Sharma, Miller, Davies. Their eyes, glowing violet, seemed to stare at me, judging. And then I understood. It wasn't just physical contact that transferred its essence. It was witnessing. It was comprehension. It was the complete, utter understanding of what it was, what it wanted, what our fate was. That was how it worked. It needed us to know. And it had opened itself to me, showing me its true, terrifying nature, its connection to the very fabric of the ocean, the universe. It was an ancient, cosmic horror, a consciousness that had slumbered in the abyss since before time, and we, with our noisy, invasive vessel, had awakened it. It was not malevolent in a human sense, it simply was, and we were an offering, a way for it to experience new forms of consciousness, to expand its ancient, stagnant being. We were food not for its body, but for its mind. It drained us, became us, so it could grow. The tendril advanced again, slower now, more deliberate, as if sensing my realization. The whispers in my head shifted, becoming a terrifying, seductive drone. Yes, you see, you understand. Join us, become all. I felt my will wavering. The allure of oblivion, the promise of belonging to something so vast, so ancient, was intoxicating. My fingers loosened on the knife. My gaze drifted to the violet light outside, to the geometric patterns that now seemed to resolve into an impossible, beautiful tapestry of existence. David, a whisper, clear and resonant, penetrated the cacophony, not alien. My own voice or a memory of it, fight. It was the last echo of my humanity, the last desperate spark. I closed my eyes. The tendril was inches away. I could feel its cold, alien presence brushing against my consciousness, trying to pull me in. I screamed again, a raw, primal roar, and I brought the knife up, not at the tendril, but at my own face. I plunged the blade into my eye, twisting. Pain, searing, blinding, absolute, exploded behind my skull. My vision went white, then black. I felt my body convulse, my nerves screaming, my mind shattering into a million fragments. But the whispers stopped. The tendril hesitated. The beautiful, terrifying images in my mind flickered. I opened my remaining eye. The tendril was still there, but it seemed to pull back slightly, confused. It had wanted me whole, my mind intact for its consumption. My act of self-mutilation, an act of sheer, animalistic defiance, had thrown it off. It was a crude, desperate defense against a foe that consumed consciousness. I was broken, bleeding, my world tilted and blurred, but I was not empty. I was still me, albeit a ruined, screaming version of myself. The sub gave a final, agonizing groan. Metal shrieked. A massive tear appeared in the viewport directly above the pulsating violet surface. Water, black and cold, roared in. The Triton's spear began to flood, the immense pressure tearing it apart from the inside. I was thrown against a bulkhead, then slammed to the deck as the compartment filled with water. The last thing I saw as the freezing blackness consumed me was the tendril retracting, still confused. It hadn't wanted me broken. It had wanted my consciousness pristine and whole, but I denied it. I denied it my clarity, my comprehension, my very sanity. As the lights failed for good and the sound of crushing metal filled my ears, the last horrifying thought that echoed in my ruined mind was not of relief, but of the ultimate, terrifying truth. I had won a battle, yes, but I had only managed to postpone the inevitable. The entity was still out there, vast and eternal, in the crushing dark, and I had merely shown it a new, more painful way to consume the next vessel that dared to trespass into its ancient, hungry domain. The cold embrace of the abyss was complete. My consciousness, fractured and screaming, became one with the dark, but it was my darkness, not theirs, and in that there was a terrible, fleeting victory.